Hello friend. I want to tell you about the Honda CR-V car. It may be the worst off-roader in its segment, but it beats most of its rivals in terms of functionality. The Honda CR-V is the most roadworthy of all mid-range crossovers and at the same time one of the most expensive cars in this category. The third-generation Honda CR-V has retained some of the features of its predecessors. However, the concept of this car has moved more towards a road car than an off-road car. Four-wheel drive has remained, although the appearance itself suggests that the CR-V is not really suitable for off-road driving. However, opening all the doors quickly makes it clear that this is a great family car, both for everyday use and for long trips. Conceptually, the interior of the Honda CR-V3 has become similar to a minivan. An example is the gear shift, placed not in the floor but on the dashboard, as in vans and delivery vehicles. It is close at hand and leaves more space to be used between the seats. Interestingly, this one has not been used, but the user can place small luggage or even a shopping bag there, which the passenger does not have to hold between their legs. Unfortunately, the slightly odd parking brake lever can be a bit of a nuisance. Traveling in the Honda CR-V is comfortable, even for 5 passengers. Those in the front cannot complain about the space and seats, and 2 in the back will sit just as comfortably, enjoying plenty of legroom. A completely flat floor allows the 5th person to travel in quite comfortable conditions. In addition, this car has a large trunk. True, 525 liters is not a record, but the Mazda CX-9, Subaru Forester or Toyota RAV4 from the same period are worse in this respect. The only car that can match the Honda is the Mitsubishi Outlander, which is a slightly larger car. It is also worth mentioning that the bench seat can be folded both traditionally, by lowering the backrests, and vertically, together with the seats, like in combivans, which really increases the transport capacity. Engines. The range of engines in the third-generation Honda CR-V is quite modest, but sufficient. Since the car has traditionally been very expensive for Honda in showrooms, the manufacturer did not focus on weak, basic engines. The minimum is 2 liters of capacity, and that is how much the petrol engine with 150 HP with the IVTEC system has. It was also installed under the hood of the Accord 8, the 2.4-liter version, with 163 to 168 horsepower, is less common, because such versions were intended for the American market and were combined with an automatic transmission. In Europe, the 2.2-liter diesel with a particulate filter was very popular. At first, the facelift offered the ICDTI unit with 140 horsepower and the iD-Tech with 150 horsepower. Since 2010, only the latter has remained in the offer. Which engine to choose? Here it is best to be guided by taste and financial possibilities, because all Honda engines are very refined. Diesel will definitely work in the short term, if you buy a car that is in good working order. Although it is very reliable and durable, after a mileage of about 300,000 kilometers you should expect higher expenses. Another thing is that all the equipment, including the particulate filter and the dual-mass flywheel, is better in Honda than in any other brand. What the user saves on fuel. Average consumption of around 6 to 8 L, 100 kilometers, will later be spent on repairs if he drives a lot. Unless he manages to change his car. Either way, we can recommend the diesel with a clear conscience, because it is the best engine in its class on the market. It is hard to talk about failures, because there are basically no typical ones. Some users complain about slightly higher oil consumption in ICDTI engines, but the same can be said about the petrol engine. It's not a tragedy, but it's worth carrying a bottle of fairly expensive 0W30. Honda recommends this. However, you can easily replace it with a high-quality product with 5W30 parameters. The cause of the problem of oil consumption is most likely driving with too high a level, i.e. with a mixture of diesel fuel plus engine oil. It is a matter of incomplete combustion of soot in the DPF filter. Then the system doses fuel to the combustion chambers and dilutes the oil. Those who check the level often and use the car according to its intended purpose will not complain. In urban conditions, it is worth checking the state of the timing chain tension. Owners of petrol engines can sleep even more peacefully. Their only problem is the large demand for fuel. True, the 2-liter is still economical, and on the road you can reduce fuel consumption to around 7 to 8 L, 100 kilometers, but in the city it is easy to reach 10 to 12 L, 100 km. Then the idea of installing a gas system comes to mind. If you install a good quality system and regularly check the valve clearance, you can enjoy the most economical version of this model. The disadvantage of the petrol engine compared to the diesel version is of course slightly worse dynamics. To enjoy the performance at the level of the weaker, 140 horsepower diesel, you have to use high revs. An alternative to the two above is a 2.4 engine with slightly more power than the 2.0, but paired with an automatic. As befits Honda, a rather lazy automatic. However, this is a virtually indestructible design if the oil is changed every 40,000 kilometers. The situation is similar with the engine. It is durable and practically without flaws. This duo can easily burn up to 14 L, 100 kilometers in the city, and on the highway you will rarely go below 10. Here, similarly to the 2.0 engine, gas can be the solution. You shouldn't expect better performance with a larger engine, but the comfort of use is already improving. What's more, the 2.4 unit, just to be precise, also has 4 cylinders and its repairs and servicing will not be more expensive than the 2.0 version. What's broken? The third-generation Honda CR-V is not by accident terribly expensive on the secondary market, especially after the facelift. It is considered a very reliable car, and it really is. Across the ocean, it is one of the models with which users bond for many years. If you want to buy the most reliable SUV from the 2007 to 2012 model year, there is no better one than the Honda CR-V. Unfortunately, the CR-V is not completely free of faults. Honda does not like neglect, especially when it comes to changing the oil. Service every 20,000 kilometers is mandatory. It is worth changing the oil in the engine every 15,000 kilometers. The oil in the gearbox should be changed twice as often. It is also necessary to check the rear axle and the operation of the drive. Unfortunately, Honda owners who don't do anything can push this wonderful mechanics to the limits of their endurance, which is why there is no shortage of neglected examples on the market. If the car has its fluids changed on time and the valves checked every 40–50,000 kilometers, not much will happen. In cars with gas installations, adjust the valves every 20,000 kilometers. The suspension is surprisingly durable, but quite expensive to repair. The steering gear will give in first, and needs to be rebuilt after about 200 to 250,000 kilometers. The brake system also requires a proper approach. The pads and discs should be replaced, checking whether the calipers are working as they should. Note, the beating felt on the steering wheel is not necessarily a bent brake disc, but usually the drive shaft. You can expect some trace corrosion. The CR-V is not as susceptible as its cousin the Accord or its younger brother the Civic, but when buying this car, it is worth checking all possible nooks and crannies, including the pit, the floor and the mounting points of the suspension elements, exhaust system and bumpers. Although the car has been on the market for quite a long time, it is not as easy to find replacements as you might think. However, you can find almost all the consumable parts, so at least in this matter there is no need to worry. However, this does not mean that the car will be repaired for pennies. A clutch for a petrol engine costs around. You'll pay a fortune for a set of summer tires, and upwards for just a wheel bearing for the rear axle. Owners of newer i-Tech diesels have to pay even more and look for replacements for longer. In some cases, it is sometimes worth buying from ASO. Not all of them, but some can be surprisingly cheap. Yes, that's not a mistake, although most of the elements have unpalatable prices. It is difficult to predict what may cost little and what may cost a lot, so before buying anything, it is worth asking the authorized service center about the price, even out of curiosity. You may be pleasantly surprised or shocked. If a given element is 10 to 20% more expensive than the replacement in the wholesaler, installing such a replacement does not really make sense. If you're looking for a part that does not affect the overall durability of the car, it is worth looking for a used one, because the market here is very well developed. It's hard to answer this question, even though the Honda CR-V is one of the best models in its class. On the other hand, it has two serious drawbacks: high prices on the secondary market and a high risk of theft. If neither of these is a problem for you, and you won't be using your SUV off-road, you won't find a better car than the Honda CR-V. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.